Welcome back to Dark Horror Stories. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true disturbing stories from Atlanta. These are tales of people who spent their nights driving strangers through the city and ended up carrying something far worse than a fare. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Story 1. Atlanta always feels different after midnight, but the southeast side gets under my skin in a way I still can't explain. I used to drive nights because the money was better and because honestly I liked the quiet. During the day, everybody's rushing, cutting lanes, leaning on horns. At night, the city loosens up. The gas stations glow like fish tanks. The traffic lights change for nobody. You can hear your own turn signal. Back then, I was living in a one-bedroom off Cleveland Avenue with a leaky kitchen faucet. I kept promising myself I'd fix. I had a coffee stain on the passenger side floor mat, a cracked phone mount, a little Braves air freshener that stopped smelling like anything after maybe 2 days, and a habit of eating peanut M&Ms one color at a time when business got slow. That night had been wet and warm. Not storming exactly, just one of those steady Atlanta rains that makes everything shine black. My coffee tasted like burnt plastic. I remember that because I almost threw it out at a Chevron and didn't. I should have. Around 1:30, maybe closer to 2, I got a pickup request near the edge of South River Forest. That alone was annoying. Nobody reasonable calls an Uber from out there unless they're drunk, lost, or trying to make their bad decisions your problem too. The pin sat near an old frontage road by a closed bait shop with a dead sign hanging sideways. I almost declined it, but surge pricing was on. When I pulled up, there was a woman standing under the awning. She looked to be in her 30s. Dark coat, hair tucked behind one ear, no umbrella. The first thing that bothered me was how dry she was. Rain was coming down in a fine silver sheet beyond the awning, and the concrete around her was wet, but her coat looked like she'd stepped out of a closet. She opened the back door and got in without saying hello. "Lenora?" I asked. She said, "Keep the doors locked once we turn off Jonesboro." Just like that, no greeting, no destination confirmation, just that. I told myself she was scared of somebody, maybe a bad ex, maybe some guy following her. Night drivers hear worse. I started the trip and glanced at the app. The route looked wrong. It was taking me off the paved road onto this little gray line that barely counted as a road at all. I said, "You sure this is right?" She leaned forward just enough for me to see her in the mirror. "If you stop for anyone, don't let them in." That was when my mouth went dry. Still, I did what people do. I rationalized. Weird passenger, bad area. She's high or paranoid or both. I kept driving. We passed the last decent streetlight and the road narrowed so much the branches were brushing both sides of my car. Rain clicked on the roof. Mud splashed up the doors. The app's signal started flickering, rotating the route like it couldn't decide where we were. Once or twice the map showed us driving through blank green space. I tried making conversation because silence can get heavy in a car. "You live out here?" "No." "You visiting somebody?" She didn't answer. Then very softly she said, "If they look like me, don't stop." I laughed a little, but it came out thin. "That's not funny." "I know." A minute later, I saw the first one. It was standing at the shoulder where the headlights reached into the rain. Same coat, same hair tucked behind one ear, same posture, just standing there with one arm lifted like it wanted a ride. I hit the brakes by instinct. Not hard, just enough for the car to dip. From the back seat, Lenora said, sharp as a snapped twig, "Go." I remember staring through the windshield and telling myself I was mistaken. Same build maybe, same general shape. Atlanta's full of people who look alike for half a second in bad light. Then the woman by the road tilted her head and the movement was too smooth, like something on a lazy Susan. No little corrections, no muscle in it, just a turn. I pressed the gas. For the next half-mile there were more of them, one between the trees, one kneeling in the ditch, one standing barefoot on the hood of an abandoned pickup so still I didn't notice her at first. Every single one looked enough like the woman in my back seat to make my chest tighten. Then I made the mistake of checking the mirror again. Lenora was sitting upright with her hands folded in her lap, perfectly normal, except her reflection blinked sideways, not closed and open. Sideways, like both eyelids pulled toward her ears instead of down. I jerked so hard the tires slid in the mud. She said, almost kindly, "Eyes on the road." I don't know why I listened. Fear, I guess. Or the feeling that the thing behind me was safer than the things outside. The road dropped toward a narrow bridge over black water. No railings, just slick concrete and river on both sides. Halfway across, the engine coughed. My dashboard lights dimmed. The radio cut to static, and out of that static I heard my own voice. Darius stopped the car. I hadn't spoken. Again, from the speakers, this time clearer. Darius let me in. Something hit the trunk, then another hit, not like a branch, like hands. I looked right just once and saw one of them keeping pace in the rain alongside the bridge. It was moving on all fours, but wrong, too loose in the shoulders, knees lifting high like a spider trying to imitate a dog. Its face kept bouncing into the light, and every time it did, it was hers. The rear door latch started clicking, unlocking, locking. Unlocking, I slapped the central lock button and held the gas to the floor. The car fishtailed, caught and shot off the bridge. The moment we reached the other side, everything stopped. No radio voices, no impacts, just rain and engine. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt. The app ended on its own. Trip complete, no fare amount, no rating screen, and the back seat was empty. I pulled into a quick trip 10 minutes later, shaking so bad I dropped my wallet. I checked the ride history. The trip wasn't there, not canceled, not hidden, gone. I even restarted the phone. At first I thought maybe she'd opened the door at some point and I hadn't noticed, which makes no sense now, but I wanted something ordinary to hold on to. Then I turned on the dome light. The whole back seat was dusted with Black River silt, though nobody had tracked in any mud. On the ceiling, right above where she'd been sitting, there was a handprint, not a full print. Just the heel of the palm and 6 long finger marks trailing toward the rear window. I sold that car 3 weeks later. I still drive sometimes, but I don't take rides near South River after dark. And every now and then, if rain hits the roof just right, my door locks start clicking by themselves. Story 2. The west side of Atlanta has these pockets where the city looks unfinished, like somebody meant to build something and got interrupted halfway through. I used to do airport runs mostly, but when flights slowed down I'd drift toward Bankhead and the old industrial roads because the requests came steady there. My name's Evelyn Hart, and I was 31 that summer, separated, sleeping badly, living off vending machine pretzels and whatever smelled least dangerous at gas stations. I kept hand lotion in my cup holder, 2 umbrellas in the trunk even though one was broken, and a church fan my aunt had left in the back seat months earlier. I never threw it away. No reason. It just stayed there. It was hot even for July, the kind of heat that sticks to your steering wheel. Near 11, I got a pickup from a half-finished subdivision beyond an overgrown stretch off Donald Lee Hollowell. I almost laughed when I saw the pin because nobody lived there. Framed houses had been sitting empty for years, all plywood and Tyvek, roads laid out with nothing at the end of them. But the fare was real. When I pulled in, a young couple waved me down from under one of those temporary real estate signs that had no sign attached anymore. The man, Tomas Aranda, carried a blue cooler. The woman, Selene Ibarra, had on a yellow rain jacket even though the sky was clear. Both looked tired in a way that made me think argument, not work. "Please don't cancel," Selene said as they got in. Everybody else did. Where to? Tomas told me an address I'd never heard of, deeper into the development. End of Briar Trace, cul-de-sac. I said, there is no end of Briar Trace. It just stops. Yeah, he said, that's where. The cooler should have been heavy from the way he carried it, but when he set it on the floor, it made almost no sound. I remember that. I also remember a mosquito whining in my ear, a smear of old sunscreen on Selene's sleeve, and how my AC kept blowing colder on one side than the other. They weren't chatty, mostly whispered to each other. I caught bits. We shouldn't have left it. It hurt you. Don't start. That kind of thing. I decided they were messing with me or doing some scavenger hunt nonsense. Young people film everything now. I figured a hidden camera would pop out any second. Then we turned onto Briar Trace and every mailbox in the street started tapping, just tapping, like metal clicks, one after another, not all at once, down the block in a sequence. Ting, 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 like somebody walking along and flicking each one with a fingernail. I slowed down. The houses were dark shells. No porch lights, no cars, no people. Selene leaned forward. Do not stop here. I said, then why are we here? Neither of them answered. At the far end of the street, where pavement gave up and weeds took over, something moved between two framed houses. I told myself it was a deer. That's what it looked like at first, sort of thin body, quick turn, but when it stepped into the headlights it rose upright, its knees bent backward. It wasn't especially tall, that made it worse somehow. It looked the size of a teenager, narrow shoulders, long forearms hanging loose, skin the color of wet drywall. Where its face should have had some expression, there was this flat slackness, as if features had been pressed in and then smeared. It put one hand on the nearest mailbox and tapped it twice. Ting, ting. Then the mailboxes all answered down the street behind us. I don't mean they moved in the wind. There was no wind. They answered. Tomas said very quietly, drive. I was already shifting into reverse when more of them came out. One on a porch frame, one crouched on a stack of cinder blocks, one standing in the open rectangle where front door would have been, head tilted, listening, all that tapping moving up toward us. I backed too fast and nearly clipped a curb. The cooler tipped over, lid popping open. There was nothing inside but acorns, hundreds of them, dry and clean, spilling across my floor mats. Selene made this strangled noise and tucked her feet up on the seat. I told you we shouldn't have taken any. Taken any from where? I almost asked, but one of the things slapped both palms against my passenger window and I forgot language for a second. Its fingers were too many. That's my iconic memory from that night, the thing that still lands on me when I'm trying to sleep. Not claws, not human hands, just too many finger joints, all folded wrong, spread across the glass like a handful of pale worms. I hit the gas, but another one had moved behind us. It stood in the middle of the road, tapping my trunk with one knuckle. Not hard, almost polite. Ting, ting. Tomas grabbed the cooler, dumped the rest of the acorns out his window and shouted, "Take them back." The tapping stopped. All of them at once, like someone cut power to a machine. The one behind us bent down, scooped a single acorn off the road and stepped away. I didn't wait for more permission. I spun the car so hard we fishtailed gravel and shot back toward the main road. In the mirror, I saw them filling the unfinished driveways, one beside each mailbox, perfectly spaced, as if they'd always been part of the neighborhood plan. I dropped Tomas and Selene at a MARTA station because they refused to go home. They argued on the curb while I watched my hands shake on the wheel. Before he got out, Tomas said, "If you find one in the car, don't keep it." Find what? But he was already gone. I vacuumed the next morning, and wedged under the passenger seat was an acorn, blackened like it had been in a fire. I threw it in a dumpster behind my apartment complex. That evening when I checked my dashcam looking for, I don't know, proof I guess, every mailbox on Briar Trace was visible in the footage, except the one that thing had touched. That slot was just empty air, like a house waiting on a door that never got installed. Story 3. Most people think the scary part of driving Uber is passengers. Drunks, angry boyfriends, somebody throwing up in your back seat. That's all annoying, sure, but it's human. You can clean a mess. You can kick somebody out. The parts of Atlanta that bother me are the stretches where human stuff thins out and there's just concrete, water, weeds, and whatever keeps living there after everybody else leaves. My name's Malik Turner. I drove nights through the Chattahoochee corridor for almost 2 years because warehouse workers tipped better than club kids. I kept a red flashlight in the door pocket, loose mints in the center console, jumper cables in the trunk, and a little notebook where I wrote down mileage because I never trusted the app totals. I also had a bad habit of letting my tank get lower than it should. That matters only because I noticed it that night. Quarter tank. I remember thinking I'd fill up after one more ride. The request came from a riverside service road near an old brick pumping station west of Midtown, not somewhere tourists end up by accident. When I arrived, an older man in a tan windbreaker was standing under a busted security light. He had a folded lawn chair in one hand and a paper sack in the other. "Gideon?" I asked. He nodded and got in, setting the chair across the back seat like he planned to use it later. "Where to?" He gave me an address that didn't exist on any map I knew, then said, "There's a gate. I'll show you." His voice was calm enough to make me uneasy, not nervous calm, familiar calm, like he'd done this many times. I told myself he worked overnight maintenance, utilities, river testing, something boring. His sack smelled faintly of canned peaches. That detail stayed with me for no reason at all. We followed his directions off the main road and down a narrower lane running parallel to the river. Kudzu crowded both sides. My headlights caught bits of chain-link fence, old concrete barriers, a shopping cart tipped over on its side. The air got cooler, not colder exactly. Damp, the kind of chill that sneaks up your sleeves. Then we passed a storm drain big enough for a person to crawl into. And Gideon said, "Don't stop if you hear knocking." I glanced up at the mirror. Why would I hear knocking? He looked out the window instead of at me. Because it knows cars. That should have been the end of it. I should have turned around and told him to find another driver. But I did what everybody does when a thing gets weird slowly enough. I kept going. The gate he mentioned was open, one side hanging off its hinge. Beyond it, the road dipped into a maintenance tunnel cut through the hill, concrete overhead, river somewhere beyond the walls. My headlights made the wet floor shine. Halfway in, something knocked from below the car. Just once, hard. I jerked and looked down like I could see through the floorboards. "Loose cover," I said out loud, mostly for myself. Gideon didn't respond. A second knock came from under my feet, then 3 quick ones from beneath the back seat. I sped up. At the center of the tunnel, there was standing water spread across the concrete, not deep, maybe an inch. As my headlights hit it, I saw a reflection before I saw anything else. A face looking up at me from under the water. Pale, hairless, mouth open wide enough to touch both sides of its own cheeks. I hit the brakes from pure reflex and the car skidded. When the real thing surfaced through the water, it didn't rise like a swimmer. It unfolded, shoulder first. Then an elbow bent the wrong way. Then a hand flattened on the concrete and dragged the rest after it from a slit in the drainage channel. I remember this too clearly for how fast it happened. Its skin looked soft, almost transparent, the way boiled onion goes thin. No eyes that I could see, just skin stretched over where eyes should have been. It turned its head toward the sound of the engine, and the motion was smooth, not muscular, like a mounted camera panning. Gideon shouted, "Go now!" The thing slapped both hands under my front bumper. My engine died. Every light on the dash went black except the battery icon. For half a second, all I could hear was water dripping and the ticking of a cooling engine. Then from somewhere under the hood came a wet scraping, like someone dragging a rake across metal. I tried the ignition once. Nothing. Again, nothing. The scraping moved along the passenger side, lower now, wheel well maybe. I could hear it circling us, though I only saw pieces of it, an arm crossing the beam of the headlights, a bare shoulder, a knee too sharp to belong to anything natural. Gideon shoved forward between the seats and jammed something into my hand. Peaches. The paper sack. Inside were chunks of canned peaches, sticky and cold. "Throw them left," he said. I stared at him. "Do it." I didn't understand, and part of me was getting angry because fear does that sometimes, turns mean. But then a hand appeared on the outside of my driver's window. It pressed so hard the fingertips whitened the glass. Long, boneless looking, water streaming off the wrist. I threw the peaches. The sack burst against the left tunnel wall with a wet smack. That thing moved so fast toward the sound I barely tracked it. 1 second at my window, next second twisted around the wall, limbs crossing over each other like it had more joints than it was supposed to. The engine started on the next turn. I don't know if Gideon laughed or gasped, maybe both. I slammed the car into gear and shot out of the tunnel so hard the rear end fishtailed. In the mirror, just before we hit the open road, I saw it crouched at the mouth of the tunnel licking syrup from the concrete with a mouth too wide to close. I dropped Gideon at a gas station off Marietta Boulevard. He took his lawn chair and paper sack like nothing had happened. I said, "What was that?" He closed the door, leaned down to the window, and said, "I started thinking I understood it once. That was my mistake." Then he walked away. The next day, I got under the car because something kept rattling. Hooked up inside the front wheel well were strands of long gray hair and 4 grooves carved into the metal from the inside outward, as if whatever grabbed the car had reached up into it and tried to pull itself in. I sold the red flashlight a month later at a yard sale because I couldn't stand seeing it in the door pocket. Even now, if I drive through standing water at night and catch a reflection moving the wrong way, I take the long route home. Story 4. I didn't mean to become a night driver. It happened the way a lot of things happened in my late 20s, which is to say I said yes to something temporary and then suddenly a year had passed. My name is Priya Desmukh. I was renting a duplex in Decatur with a broken porch light and a basil plant I kept forgetting to water. I drove evenings after finishing remote tech support shifts because staring at ticket queues all day made me restless. Atlanta at dusk felt manageable then. Not gentle, exactly, but human. Brake lights, food smells, somebody dragging a trash can to the curb, a plane crossing low enough to make your windows hum. The ride that got to me came in just after sundown from an assisted living place near Panthersville. The facility was nice enough. Brick entrance, fake ferns, one of those circular driveways where everything looks slightly overlit. My passenger was listed as June Halberd. A nurse brought her out in a cardigan and sensible shoes and leaned down to my window. "She's going to an old church road near Stonecrest," the nurse said. She insisted. June got in very carefully, both hands on the door frame, and thanked me in this papery little voice. I remember her perfume smelled like rose powder. I remember I had a grocery bag with 2 limes rolling around in the front footwell. I remember the AC was 1 degree too cold and I didn't fix it because she hadn't complained. For the first 10 minutes, June seemed completely ordinary. She asked if traffic had always been this bad. She misremembered where a Kroger used to be. She told me her father had once owned land out past the church where the dirt turns red. Old person conversation, harmless. I even relaxed a little. Then she asked, "Do you mind if I lean forward?" Before I could answer, I saw her hands come up on either side of my headrest in the mirror. That's the image I can't get rid of. They looked almost normal at first glance. Thin hands, age spots, pale knuckles. But the fingers had too many joints, not extra fingers. That would have been simpler somehow. The fingers themselves were too long and bent in 3, maybe 4 places, folding around the headrest like roots wrapping a pipe. I flinched so hard I nearly drifted onto the shoulder. "You all right, dear?" she asked from the back seat in the same soft voice. I told myself arthritis does strange things. I told myself mirrors distort depth. I told myself I was tired and needed to eat something real instead of almonds from the glove compartment. So I kept driving. The farther we went, the less developed things got. Closed garden centers, empty church lots, patches of woods sitting between subdivisions like something forgotten. June gave directions off the app now, correcting it when it tried to reroute us. "No, not that way," she said. "That road doesn't like visitors." I almost laughed, but I couldn't seem to. We turned onto a narrow lane with no houses in sight, just trees and red clay shoulders. The last of the sunset was thinning out, and the headlights made the trunks look packed tight together, too tight for a city that near. Then June started humming, very low, almost below hearing. The temperature in the car dropped so fast my windshield fogged at the edges. I reached for the defroster and glanced in the rear view. She was sitting farther forward than she should have been. I know that sounds small, but it was. The distance from the back seat to the front hadn't changed. She had. Her knees were pressed against the center console, though I'd never seen her move. Her smile was still gentle. Her eyes, though, looked wrong, not dead, not glowing, just too still like painted eyes on a doll. "June," I said, trying not to let my voice shake, "how much farther?" "We're nearly home." There was no church, no house. Just a clearing ahead with a collapsed sign and what looked like old foundation stones half swallowed by weeds. I stopped the car. She said, "I didn't ask you to stop." That's when I looked down and saw muddy prints on the back of my seat. Handprints, fresh, spread wide, higher than a seated person's arms could comfortably reach. I unlocked the doors. "This is as far as I go." For a second, she didn't move. Then she tilted her head, and I heard a soft clicking in her neck, like knitting needles touching. She placed one of those long-jointed hands on the seat beside her and pushed herself upright in a motion that seemed to take too many parts of the body into account. Not painful looking, practiced. When she stood outside the car, she seemed taller than she had inside. Her cardigan hung wrong, stretched across shoulders that didn't match the rest of her. She bent down to my open window and said, "If I left something, don't bring it back." Then she walked into the clearing. Maybe walked isn't right. Her feet moved like steps, but the upper half of her drifted, smooth and steady, not matching the lower half. I watched until the trees took her. I should have gone immediately. Instead, I sat there like an idiot with my foot on the brake, trying to make the world make sense again. Assisted living patient with a deformity, sleep deprivation, rural weirdness. Any explanation I could stack together. Then something tapped the rear window from the outside. I turned. June was crouched on the trunk, face level with the glass, smiling in at me. Her mouth was closed, but the smile had widened past where cheeks should have let it. I screamed. I'm not proud of that, but I did. Slammed the gas, spun the wheel, and tore back onto the lane, throwing red clay. She slid off the trunk or jumped. I didn't see. I just drove until I hit a lit gas station and parked under the canopy, shaking. There were muddy finger streaks hooked over the top edge of my rear windshield, too high for someone standing on the ground to have made them. I reported the ride in the app the next day, thinking maybe I'd get some record I could use to prove I hadn't invented her. There was a receipt, same pickup point, same drop-off area, but the passenger name read, returned item. I quit driving nights after that, not immediately, maybe 2 weeks later. Long enough to notice one more thing. Embedded in the backseat seam was a single brittle rose petal, dark with dried mud, though she'd never carried flowers. Story 5. There's a part of southeast Atlanta where the road can give way to marsh and old industrial junk so gradually you don't notice you've left the normal city behind. I was doing rides full-time then, trying to stay afloat after a roofing injury. My name's Wesley Boone. I kept aspirin in the console, a folded Braves cap on the dash to block glare, and a pair of work gloves under the seat because I kept meaning to clean out the trunk and never did. If I'm honest, I liked the late-night calls from the weird edges of town. They broke up the routine. That was before the prison farm story. The pickup came from a taco place near Grant Park. Two guys in their 20s got in, damp from the humidity and smelling like beer and citronella candles. One was named Nolan Sykes, the other Faye Corbin's brother. No, sorry, that's backwards. Faye was the sister who made the booking. The rider with Nolan was her friend Jericho Vale. I only remember because they spent the first 5 minutes arguing over whose idea it had been. They wanted to go out near the old Atlanta prison farm trails by Constitution Lakes. At midnight? I asked. Jericho laughed. We're just grabbing something. That should have warned me more than it did. The road out there narrows and darkens fast. Boardwalks flooded low ground, long grass whispering against itself. My headlights kept catching frogs at the edges, their eyes flashing and disappearing. I had barbecue chips crumbs in the cup holder. The radio kept losing signal. My left knee was aching from the old injury. Mundane things, ordinary things. I noticed those now because they were the last ordinary part. We got near the trail entrance and Nolan said, "Pull up to the gate. We won't be long." There wasn't supposed to be a gate anymore, but there it was. New-looking chain stretched between two old concrete posts, no sign on it, just a length of yellow cloth tied in knots. Jericho went pale. "That wasn't here," I said. "Then we can turn around." Instead, Nolan got out. I hate that I didn't leave right then, but they looked embarrassed more than frightened, like kids caught in a stupid dare. Jericho followed him, and before I could decide whether to wait or go, both of them were beyond my headlights, moving toward the reeds with their phone flashlights bobbing. I locked the doors and sat there, counted bugs hitting the windshield, picked salt off my shirt from the chips, tried not to think about how quiet the place was. Then the frogs stopped. Not faded, stopped. A minute later, Jericho came sprinting back alone. "Drive," he said, yanking my back door. "Drive right now." "No, and he took it." "What?" Jericho was crying now, or close to it. "Just drive." I should have demanded an answer. Instead, I put the car in reverse, but the wheels spun in the wet dirt. While they spun, something rose in the black water beside the road. At first, I thought it was cattails catching the light. Then I saw the shapes were hands, dozens of them, pale and slick, pressing upward from just below the algae as if there were people standing under the surface and feeling for a ceiling. That alone would have been enough. Then one of the hands reached the bank, pulled, and brought up the rest of it. It looked woven. That's the closest word I have. Not made of reeds exactly, but threaded with them. Wet strips hanging off a body shape that kept shedding pond water. Where a face should have been, there was just a smooth, dark hollow ringed with grass roots. Jericho made this awful broken sound and curled against the opposite door. More of them climbed out, not fast, not slow, coordinated, one after another. All headed toward the tree line where Nolan had gone. Then I saw Nolan. He stepped out from the reeds smiling like he was walking back from a normal bathroom break, but he was holding something in both hands, cradled against his chest. It was my front license plate. I had no idea it was missing. He walked up to the hood and set the plate carefully against the windshield. His smile never changed. Behind him, those woven things stopped at the water's edge like they were waiting. "Open the trunk," Nolan said. That's when I realized his voice was wrong. Not deeper or distorted, just empty of breath, like the words were being pushed out of him by hand. Jericho whispered, "That's not him." Again, I tried to rationalize. Shock, drugs. He found some weird art project in the swamp and he's messing with us. People say crazy stuff when they're scared. Then Nalan opened his mouth wider to say something else, and pond water poured out in a clean stream without touching his lips. I got traction and hit the gas. The chain at the gate snapped against the bumper and whipped under us. In the mirror, I saw Jericho twist around to look back. Nalan hadn't chased us. He was standing in the road holding both hands up, palms forward. Every palm had a thumb on both sides. Jericho threw up into his lap about a mile later. I dropped him at a Waffle House because it was the brightest place around. He refused police, refused an ambulance, refused even to let me call his sister. Just kept saying he took something out of the water and they let him keep it. The next morning, I found my real front license plate in the trunk under the work gloves. Bent in half, caked with black marsh mud, as if something had been trying to fold it small enough to carry. Story 6. Sweetwater Creek looks peaceful in daylight if you stay near the paved areas. Families, trail signs, old mill ruins, the river doing what rivers do. But there are pockets around it that feel older than the park, older than any map. I didn't grow up in Georgia, so maybe locals know that instinctively. I didn't. I was just a night driver trying to pay off a divorce lawyer. Karina Solis, 34, driving a silver Camry with one speaker blown out and a cardigan balled up in the trunk because I'm always either too cold or too hot. I kept lip balm in the cup holder, dog treats in the glove box for people who traveled with pets, and an unopened pack of cinnamon gum that had fused together from the heat. The request came from a motel near Six Flags. Pickup name, Lucian Crow, already theatrical enough to annoy me. When I arrived, there was no man waiting, just a muddy black dog standing in the parking lot under a yellow light. I almost canceled. Then my phone rang through the app. A man's voice said, "I'm sorry, I'm by the creek access. The dog will lead you." I laughed because I thought it had to be a joke. But the dog trotted a few steps, stopped, and looked back at my car. I wish I'd driven off, that's all. Instead, because the night had been slow and because curiosity can wear the same face as bad judgment, I followed it, not far. A service lane, then a gravel pull-off near the creek access road. A man was standing there in a dark coat, one hand raised. He got in the back seat, breathing hard as if he'd been hiking. "Thank you," he said. "Take me to Douglasville, fast as you can." He smelled like wet leaves and old pennies. The dog stayed outside watching. I started the trip. Lucian sat directly behind me, which I hate, and kept giving tiny corrections to the app route. Not conversation, corrections. Left here. No, keep going, don't take the bridge. After a couple minutes he asked, "Do you have siblings?" That question hit me wrong because I do, or did. My brother Mateo died 3 years earlier. "Yeah," I said, because lying felt somehow dangerous. Lucian said, "If you hear one of them calling from outside the car, don't answer." I actually smiled then, bitter and tired. "You people all reading from the same script tonight?" He didn't reply. A few miles later, we passed the old mill access, and I heard someone yell my name from the trees. Not vaguely, not something that sounded close. My name exactly in Mateo's voice. "Karina." I slammed my brakes without meaning to. Gravel spat under the tires. For one wild second, all I could think was impossible, impossible, impossible. Lucian leaned forward. "Do not roll the window down." I was breathing so hard my fingers tingled. I told myself it was some guy, coincidence, a brain trick. Grief does strange things to sound. We hear what we're afraid of hearing. I know that. I knew it then. Then the voice came again, closer. "Karina, I found your keys." That was what Mateo used to say when we were kids and I'd lose things. A stupid little family line. Nobody else should have known it. I looked toward the trees. There was something standing between them, half lit by my headlights reaching through the branches. Human height, wrong proportions. Its arms hung nearly to its knees. It stepped forward, and what I first took for a grin was a split running from each corner of its mouth up into the cheeks, opening when it moved. Lucian made a sound in the back seat, not fear. Recognition, maybe. Drive. The thing by the trees lifted one hand and waved exactly the way my brother used to, 2 loose flicks from the wrist. That broke me. I hit the gas so hard I nearly fishtailed into the ditch. The voice followed along the side of the car at a running pace, still speaking in Mateo's voice, then in my mother's, then in my own, every version begging me to stop, to help, to listen. Lucian started praying under his breath, or maybe not praying, repeating something, same 3 or 4 words. At the next bend, the dog appeared in the road. I swerved, missed it by inches. When I looked back in the mirror, Lucian was gone. No door opening, no sound, just gone, and the back seat was wet. I drove straight to a gas station on Thornton Road and sat under the lights until dawn. Didn't care that the app kept chiming with new ride requests. I wasn't taking anybody anywhere. When the sun came up, I checked the back seat. Mud, dog hair, no Lucian, no wallet, no dropped phone, nothing. But caught in the stitching of the seatbelt was one thing, a strip of pale bark, shaved smooth and carved with a figure of a dog standing beside a person whose mouth was split wide to the ears. I've never gone near Sweetwater Creek after dark again. And sometimes, when I misplace my keys, I still hear Mateo's voice for half a second before I remember he's been gone for years. Story 7. Airport runs are supposed to be safe, predictable. That's why I liked them. Travelers are tired, not drunk. They tell you where they're headed and mostly just look at their phones. I'd work the loop around Hartsfield for hours some nights. My name is Jonah Mercer. I had a thermos that never quite lost the smell of soup, sunglasses in the overhead slot I only used once a month, and a little packet of ibuprofen in the center console because neck pain followed me around after 30. If I got bored, I'd count the planes I could see from the cell lot. Harmless routine. I trusted routine. The request came around 3:10 a.m. from an airport hotel shuttle zone. Passenger name, Eamon Ruck. He was hard to miss. Tall, even sitting down on the curb, long black coat despite the heat, one carry-on beside him that looked too small to hold anything. He opened the door and sort of folded into the back seat. That's the only word for it, folded. No scrape of knees, no ducking like a tall person usually does, just a smooth bend and he was inside. Downtown, I asked. Beneath it, he said. Then, maybe because he saw my face in the mirror, he added, Cortlandt Street. His voice was pleasant, educated. I told myself he was trying to be funny. The freeway was mostly empty. Good time, easy money. I remember a crumpled receipt under my shoe, the dashboard clock running 4 minutes fast, a little grease stain on my sleeve from a biscuit I'd eaten earlier. Those details feel ridiculous now, but they matter to me. They remind me I was in the normal world at the start. Eamon never touched his phone, never checked the route. He just watched the overpasses as we passed under them. After a while he asked, "Do you ever notice how many things live above roads?" I said, "Birds mostly." He smiled in the mirror. "Mostly." I didn't like that. Still, weird conversation from weird people is part of the job. I shrugged it off. We were coming through a stretch of underpass near the connector when traffic slowed because of lane closures. Concrete walls on both sides, work lights ahead. The car idled. I looked in the mirror. Eamon was no longer sitting upright. He was pressed flat against the roof of the back seat area, hands and feet spread into the corners like gravity had changed for him. Not lunging, not aggressive, just clinging there calmly, his face pointed down at me. I whipped around so fast my seatbelt locked. The back seat was empty. I nearly put the car into the barrier. Horns behind me, somebody shouting. When I looked again in the mirror, he was sitting normally with his carry-on in his lap. "You looked," he said. I was genuinely angry now, because anger felt better than panic. "Either you stop doing whatever this is, or I end the ride." He tilted his head. "Please don't stop beneath the overpasses." A second later, something struck the roof above us. Heavy, a thud that dented metal, then another farther back, hopping from lane to lane overhead. Construction workers up there, I told myself. Debris, loose equipment, perfectly explainable. Then one of the workers' floodlights swung across the underside of the overpass, and I saw a body stretched along the concrete above the traffic. Not a whole body in one place. Arms too long draped across seams in the overpass. Legs hooked backward into shadow. It was moving hand over hand along the ceiling like a gecko. Only when the light touched it, the skin flashed pale and hairless. Cars around me started honking. One swerved. Eamon shut his eyes like he couldn't bear to see. It noticed the luggage. What luggage?" He looked down at the little carry-on in his lap. Then the roof over my head buckled inward with a bang. Dust sifted down. A hand, gray and thin as rebar wrapped in skin, pushed 2 fingers through the split in the headliner and felt around above me. That's the image that stayed. Not the whole thing. Just those fingers probing the roof lining of my car while traffic sat trapped around us. I punched the wheel and jumped the shoulder, scraping cones and nearly clipping a barrier. People behind me were screaming now, or maybe just shouting. Hard to tell over the engine. Eamon said, "At the next light, leave the bag." "What is in it?" He gave me the saddest look I've ever seen from a passenger. "Space." The next red light, I belayed. I don't mean I elegantly stopped and considered my options. I slammed the brakes, threw his carry-on out into the intersection and ran the light. Didn't ask if he was getting out, didn't care. In the mirror I saw the bag land upright and split open. Nothing came out, but the thing above the road dropped straight down on top of it, limbs wrapping around emptiness like it had found meat. When I finally pulled over under a gas station canopy, Eamon was gone. No trip record issue. No missing history. He'd paid, tipped, even. There was a dent in the roof over the back seat, and embedded in the fabric where those fingers had come through was a chalky gray flake shaped almost like a fingernail, but thin and ridged like concrete that had learned to bend. I still do airport runs sometimes. I just never sit under overpasses if traffic stops. I'd rather circle for an hour than wait beneath something that might be waiting too. Story 8. Cemeteries don't usually bother me. Quiet, sure, but honest. It's parking lots and feeder roads around them that get strange. Places where people are just passing through, not staying. I learned that driving weekends around Atlanta because somebody always needs a ride home from a wedding, a wake, a party they regret. My name's Simon Baptiste. I drive a hybrid now, but back then it was an older Accord with a stained trunk liner and one hubcap I never replaced. I kept hand sanitizer clipped to the vent, lemon candies in my purse, and a charger cable with electrical tape around the end because I'm cheap. My story started near Oakland Cemetery after an evening reception. The passenger was a woman named Nadine Vilas, not drunk, just tired-looking, dressed in black, carrying her heels in one hand. She slid into the back seat and gave me an address off Cascade Road near an old burial ground I didn't know. "You can drop me at the lane," she said. "You don't need to turn around." That line would have been fine in daylight. At night it sat wrong. Still, the ride started normal. Nadine smelled like rain and gardenias. She apologized for a smear of cake icing on one finger and asked if I minded silence because she had a headache. I didn't. My own head hurt too. I'd skipped dinner and eaten peanuts from the glove box. There was a paper grocery receipt stuck to my shoe. My windshield had a dead bug streak I kept forgetting to wash off. All ordinary. Then we turned onto the lane. No houses, No lights, just old trees arched over the road and low stone markers half hidden in grass beyond them. Not a full cemetery, more like a family plot that had spread over time. Nadine sat up. "If you see anyone with candles, don't let them in." I laughed once because by then I was so used to strange passengers saying strange things that my brain filed it under Atlanta nonsense. She did not laugh. A quarter-mile in, I saw the first candle. It was floating about waist height among the trees to our left. No hand holding it, just a steady flame moving between trunks. I slowed down. Could have been somebody walking with the candle hidden by the angle. That's what I thought. Church vigil memorial, weird but harmless. Then more lights appeared. One to the right, two ahead, 7, maybe 8 drifting into the road. And beneath each candle was a figure wrapped in something pale and loose, like old paper hanging off a frame. Their faces weren't visible. Not because of shadow, because each face was turned down too far, chin against chest, as if the necks no longer worked. Nadine whispered, "Please don't stop." I said, "I'm not planning to." One of the figures stepped in front of the car. I hit the brakes anyway. You would too. It moved slowly, deliberate, candle held level. When my headlights hit its face, the paper wrappings fluttered apart just enough for me to see there was no mouth. Instead, the flame was inside the head, small and bright, burning where a tongue should have been. That was the moment that got branded into me. The figure lined toward my hood, and the light inside its throat flickered harder, as if drawing breath. Then something tapped the rear passenger window beside Nadine. A second candle. A second paper-draped face bowed against the glass. Then a third. They weren't surrounding the whole car, just her side, all of them wanting that side specifically. Nadine began fumbling with the lock. "I shouldn't have come this way," she muttered. "I shouldn't have come back. Who are they?" She shook her head. "Don't ask me that now." The figure in front raised its candle and touched the flame to my hood. No scorch, no smoke, just the softest tick sound like nail on metal, and every dashboard light shut off. The engine stayed running, but the interior went black, total black except for those throat flames outside. I heard one of them make a sound, not a groan, not words, paper crumpling slowly near my ear. Nadine grabbed my shoulder through the gap between the seats and shouted, "Reverse! Do not turn around, just reverse!" I did, blind fast, my neck straining, tires bumping over roots and ruts. Candles drifted along beside us, keeping pace. One figure brushed the car as we passed, and the sound was exactly like dry pages dragged over paint. We burst back onto the main road backward, and I finally slammed into park. When I looked over my shoulder, the lane was empty. No candles. No people, just darkness under trees. Nadine was crying silently now. She asked me to drop her at a gas station instead of home. I didn't argue. When she got out, she left one of her shoes behind. I grabbed it to return it and found a strip of pale paper tucked inside with a brown thumbprint burned through the center, round as a candle hole. My hood still has a mark from where that flame touched it. Not burned paint. More like the clear coat was pressed inward by a warm fingertip. I sold the car last year and I didn't mention the mark. I still feel bad about that. Story 9. North of Atlanta, around the office parks and long roads in Sandy Springs and Dunwoody, nights can feel emptier than the woods. Too much pavement, too much glass, not enough people. I used to prefer that area because the rides were clean and the tips were decent. My name's Hector Alvarez. I had a little St. Christopher medal hanging from the mirror, a stack of napkins under the armrest, and a habit of listening to Braves post-game reruns long after the season ended because familiar voices keep you awake. The request came from an office campus that should have been dark at that hour. Nearly 2 a.m., every building black except one stairwell light on the far side. Passenger name, Talia Monroe. I pulled under the awning and waited. No one came out. The app showed the little passenger dot moving. not toward me, around the building, then across the parking deck. Then down a service lane where there was no sidewalk. I called, no answer. I was about to cancel when the back door opened and someone slid in wearing a reflective cycling jacket and a black helmet. "Sorry," the writer said, woman's voice. "Young, battery died." "That happens. Weird entrance, but fine." "Where to?" She gave me an apartment address near Roswell Road. The voice was normal. The route was normal. I relaxed for maybe 5 minutes. Then I noticed she still hadn't removed the helmet. Not strange by itself, but she also never shifted, never adjusted the strap, never checked her phone, never did any of the tiny restless things passengers do. In the mirror, all I could really see was my own headlights reflecting in the visor. I made small talk. "Late shift." Something like that. "You biking out here this time of night is brave." I wasn't biking. That answer sat between us. I noticed my soda had gone flat in the cup holder. I noticed the defroster vent rattling. I noticed the St. Christopher medal had stopped swinging even though we just hit a pothole. Little things. My body was already picking up something my brain hadn't admitted. At the next light, another ride request popped up. Same pickup point, same passenger name, Talia Monroe. I frowned, declined it, kept driving. 10 seconds later it came again. Same name. I turned in my seat a little. "Hey, did you book this ride twice?" No answer. "Ma'am." Still nothing. I looked fully into the mirror. The visor was up now. I never saw it move. There was no face behind it, not darkness, not a shadow, just a flat, glassy black surface reflecting the road behind us with perfect clarity, like a second rearview mirror mounted where a head should have been. I think I said no out loud, just that one word. Then the black surface changed, not opened, not cracked. A copy of the road appeared deeper inside it, receding impossibly far, and in that reflected road I saw another version of my car driving behind us with its headlights off. Every hair on my arms lifted. I told myself helmet, visor, weird tint. I'm seeing reflections layered together. That's all. Modern materials do odd things. My mind was desperate for anything reasonable. The phone chimed again. New request, same name, same pickup point, then again, and again. The map behind my route filled with little pickup dots, all stacked on top of one another, multiplying in the office park we'd left. My passenger raised one hand and pointed ahead without speaking. At the edge of my headlights in the bike lane there were more reflective jackets, 3 at first, then 5, then maybe 10. All standing beside the road facing us, each wearing a black helmet, each still as a signpost. The reflective strips flashed silver-white whenever the car moved. None of them were on bikes. I slowed by instinct. The passenger in my back seat made a clicking sound with her tongue, disapproving almost. The roadside figures all lifted one hand at the same time and pointed back toward the office park. That was the iconic part for me, not because it was loud or violent, but because the movement was so perfectly matched, it felt rehearsed by something that had watched humans and missed the point. I didn't stop. I cut across 2 lanes, blew through a yellow light, and headed for the perimeter because I wanted traffic, cameras, witnesses, anything populated. The rider in back finally spoke. "You missed the turn." The voice was still female, still calm, but now there were 2 of it, a half-second apart, like one speaker had been copied badly over another. I said, "You need to get out." No answer. I pulled into the brightest 24-hour pharmacy I could find and jumped out before putting the car in park properly. A clerk inside yelled something at me through the glass. I didn't care. I yanked the rear door open, empty seat, but the seatbelt was buckled, and hanging from it was my St. Christopher medal, broken off the mirror and looped carefully through the latch like someone had tried to secure a passenger who wasn't there. I checked the app later. The completed ride showed a drop-off nowhere near where I'd stopped. Somewhere inside the parking deck of the office campus. And under rider feedback, there was one note from the passenger: "You looked back too soon." Story 10. By the time this happened, I'd been driving long enough to think I had a system for danger. No pickups from empty lots. No arguing with couples fighting in the back seat. No side trips off the app after 2 in the morning. The problem with having rules is that sometimes all it takes is one tired exception. I'm in Naomi Park. I drove a white Corolla with a strawberry air freshener, a blanket in the trunk for airport sleepers, and a glove box full of soy sauce packets because I ate too much takeout between rides. My mother used to call my job collecting strangers. I laughed at that then. It was late, maybe closer to 3 than 2 on Buford Highway, neon still on. Half the city asleep, the other half smoking outside restaurants and pretending the night wasn't ending. I got a request from a motel with one flickering vacancy sign. Passenger name, Cora Dempsey. When I pulled up, there was no adult waiting, just a little boy standing under the sign with a backpack. I locked the doors and cracked the window. "Where's Cora?" He looked maybe 8, maybe 10. Hard to tell. He said, "She's coming." I should have left, I know that. Then a woman's voice from somewhere behind the motel called, "1 second." A woman stepped into view. Thin, tired, hair tied back, she leaned to my window. "I'm so sorry," she said. "Can you take my nephew to my sister's place by the river lot? I'll follow in another car." That was another no, obviously, but she looked exhausted, the boy looked miserable, and she already had the destination in the app. I told myself maybe she was in a domestic situation, maybe she needed the kid out first. I've seen enough of Atlanta to know families do what they have to do at strange hours. The boy got in the back, backpack on his lap, no booster, no fuss, just silent. "What's your name?" I asked. "Eli." "Okay, Eli. Your aunt's behind us." He nodded. In the mirror I could see headlights pulling out from behind the motel. Good enough, I thought, not smart, just good enough. We headed northeast first, then cut along a service road I didn't know toward an old river access lot. The roads emptied, storefronts thinned out. Eli sat still the whole time, which kids almost never do. I asked if he was okay. He said yes. I asked if he wanted music. He said no. The backpack smelled faintly like dirt. I noticed the little stuff because the silence got heavy. My turn signal clicking, the air freshener brushing the vent, a ketchup packet on the floor from earlier, my wrist hurting from gripping the wheel too hard, headlights behind us never getting closer, never farther. Then Eli asked, "Do you always let people ride if they're already in the car?" I said, "What do you mean?" He looked at the seat beside him. It was empty. I felt that answer travel through me slowly all the way down. I checked the mirror again. Empty seat, just him. I said carefully, "Eli, is someone supposed to be with you?" He didn't answer. He was looking out the opposite window now toward the dark tree line. I told myself, kid imagination, stress, bad family night, don't feed it. Just finish the ride and get the child somewhere lit and safe. Then I saw the headlights behind us vanish, not turn off. Vanish mid-reflection like the road behind had folded shut. "Eli," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "where exactly are we going?" He pointed ahead to a gravel lot by the river, half flooded, no buildings in sight. "She waits there." "No," I said. "We're going somewhere with people." That's when he finally looked at me properly in the mirror. His face was normal. That's what bothered me. Completely normal, except his mouth was full of small white things that were not teeth anymore. They were loose in there, shifting against each other like a handful of rice grains when he spoke. "She doesn't like when drivers change the plan." I braked hard. Something in the front passenger seat exhaled. I know exactly how insane that sounds, but I heard it right beside me. warm, damp patient. The seat that had been empty all ride suddenly carried the weight of someone settling deeper into it. The iconic image, the one I still wake up with sometimes, is what I saw when I forced myself to turn my head. There was a woman sitting in my passenger seat wearing motel clothes soaked through with river water. Her hair hung in strings. Her hands were folded politely in her lap, and her face was turned backward, not twisted, not broken-looking, simply turned all the way around so her features faced the back seat, smiling at the boy. I made a sound I've never heard out of myself before and threw the car into reverse. The woman did not move. Eli did not scream. He just held his backpack tighter. The car fishtailed in the gravel. The woman lifted one hand and laid it gently over mine on the gear shift. Her skin felt soft and cold like meat thawing in a sink. "Finish it," she said. I bit her. Again, not proud, but I did. I lunged and bit the side of that hand hard enough to taste mud and something metallic. She snatched it back with a hiss that sounded more offended than hurt. That gave me 1 second. I slammed into drive, cut the wheel, and tore out of the lot spraying water. In the rear view, Eli was gone. Passenger seat empty too. I drove straight to a police precinct parking lot because it was the brightest place I could think of. Sat there until daylight with every door locked. Nobody approached. Nobody asked why I was there. When the sun came up, I checked the front passenger seat. Pressed into the fabric was a wet imprint of a hand with the thumb on the wrong side, and on the floor behind it was Eli's backpack. Inside were river stones, a child's t-shirt, and a motel key card snapped cleanly in half. I turned that backpack in. I never heard anything about a missing kid or a woman from that motel. Maybe I didn't want to hear it. Maybe there was nothing to hear. I still drive, but I don't collect strangers the way my mother used to say. Not anymore. Now if a ride starts feeling wrong, I cancel it. I don't care about the fee. I don't care about the rating. Some passengers aren't trying to get somewhere. They're trying to be let in. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments which story unsettled you most, and share this with your friends who love a good scare. Until next time, stay safe out there.